Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Mish-Mashing Battle Lounge with the 2MK team. As always, Monday means Street Fighter V, and hopefully not a terrible connection to some of the players we're seeing in the lounge at the moment. But it really is, as always, hard to tell. This is, as always, a more or less US East Coast lobby, which means that, if you are not at least on the coast of the Atlantic Ocean or near to it, you may not have good connections to other people in this lounge. But it can be deceiving at times, and with good enough internet you will often find that you can play fairly consistently either way. I may have less to say than usual on this stream. As we're not specifically trying to have any main goal for today's session, and I find that normally if I don't have a goal to talk about something, I tend to ramble on. Which can be good, but only when there's actually stuff to analyze. And you can't be sure of that at all.
Round 2. Fight!
Oh no, appears that time has stopped. No, there we go.
It's go time!
That was kind of terrible. I don't know why DWuulfe's session seems so low today, but we're going to loop through a bit and hopefully resolve the main problem we were having. Can't be sure though because things are looking kind of weird right now. Okay, looks like they're dealing with that. And off they go. This is probably the most reasonable test, so we'll see what we get from them in terms of a report.
Let's do this! loud.
Boom! That's how you start the fight and finish it quickly.
Round one.
Let's see what you've got. I took this round.
Round two. Fight.
Let's see what you've got. Nice try. You almost did it. Take this.
Laura wins. Round one. Fight.
Let's see what you've got. I took this round.
Round two. Fight.
Here we go.
Executed. Chun-Li.
行くわよ。 That's how you start the fight and finish it quickly. 私のクンフー見せてあげる。
Round 1. Fight. Round 2. Fight. You win. Round 1. Fight. Round 2. Fight. Final round. Fight! You win! It's go time! Let's do this! Chun-Li,
さあ行くわよ。
Cody,
Okay, come on. Desk work just isn't my thing, you know? Looks like I can have a little fun now.
round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! Round one. Fight! Round two. Fight! You win!
I believe that we are having a maintenance at 9 Eastern, meaning that the lounge today will not be staying open any longer than that. But if you have just jumped in, as a result of this, you can expect that we will be shifting around somewhat so that you're more likely to get a chance to play in the first place. And after all, just playing through standard team things can be done nearly any time. I probably should have dropped back for this one, but I'm kind of in a flow right now. This opponent is usually the one who will break that flow though, unless I slow down quite a lot in specific ways and speed up in others. So let's see if I can manage to pull that off, or whether or not the things that have been helping me get through the previous matches will hit their usual limit.
Round one. Fight!
Well, it isn't particularly laggy, and so far no limit today.
Round two. Fight!
Game can't decide whether or not I was stunned or not. I have no idea. Though again, DWuulfe has weird internet lately and we don't know why. Therefore, if it didn't kick me to back, because it sometimes does, I will drop to back anyway, and we'll see what happens. And I did in fact end up dropping to back. Unfortunately, the two people that were here didn't stick around long enough to get their own chances at it. But we do have NBK5 Nat back on, who will probably be up for their match mostly likely match is in a bit. I think I've covered analysis from that side enough on this stream that today I'll probably be focusing on seeing what I can give them, if anything. The one thing I say about that player all of the time is that they think extremely quickly, which makes them really good practice for basically all of us. Because while I can do it, Chun is a little too oppressive with that speed,
Show you the divide in our class.
and there are less things to react to overall.
Oh, that's how you start the fight and finish
Whereas
Round
the
one.
player I'm talking about normally plays Ken or Ryu, sometimes others, but overall, not the style of character that is absolutely oppressive and neutral in the same way.
Round two. Fight. Final round. Fight. Karin wins. Round one. Fight. Round two. Fight. Lara wins. Round 1. Fight! Round 2. Fight! Lara wins. Let's do this.
This matchup with this player is in fact, as a result, one of Omni's harder matchups that you would find facing in this lounge. Omni's fighting style is often very methodical, but it is not necessarily built to deal with people who have too many options, specifically options that bypass a specific spacing and blocking, and people who think extremely fast. And we are getting to see NBK5 Nats Ryu today, which means even more speed, because technically this player's Ken is slightly slower. At least every time I've seen it, it's been slightly slower.
That's how you start the fight and finish it quickly.
Round 1.
As far as I know, the connection between them is good. The main problem being faced here is this makes fighting Ryu closer to the level of fighting Dalsim. You don't need to get as close. In fact, you need to get further away and then jump into the right position, similar to how you would do against Sagat. In fact, you'll notice that the farther away Ryu gets, the more likely it is that something bad is going to happen. He wants to stay at a very specific spot you've just seen demonstrated there, and will usually move back up to it given the option pretty quickly. This also gives that capacity to react at closer ranges by dashing up and doing things. And being willing to do that dash up and do things. And looking for that as a part of your strategy is part of what I mean about thinking faster. It's easy to just throw fireballs. Zoning has a definite charm, but Ryu specifically now isn't the same type of zoner as before because there's so many other options within the game. This was true back in Street Fighter 4 as well, but at least you had to care a bit more about specific things. Now, Ryu's footsies are a lot better, but he's not necessarily able to zone with the same tenacity as before, even with the buffs he's got. Fortunately, with that V-Trigger 2 active, he gets what you would expect from a character like this. The Hadouken hits, and Ryu flows right into the space and does the damage. The main thing you normally want to do against this style and flow is to back off a little bit and then jump the fireball. And your aim is to jump the fireball in a way that will make Ryu do a different anti-air. Possibly an anti-air that you can make him not actually hit. But if the player is moving too well, they know exactly what's going to happen. Still, it is beneficial, even if you take the hit, as Ryu does not easily get knockdowns off those without strong confirms of a specific type. And Lara can do a lot more things from closer ranges than Ryu can. There's that spacing again. I think that was a whiffed heavy bolt. So yes, definitely a good training partner for Omni simply because you have to get so much faster to keep up.
Round 1. Fight!
If you're not used to dealing with this sort of person, there's not really a lot you can actually do here. Because they're not standing there thinking about, okay, how do I hit you with this fireball? In fact, I'd be willing to bet that this player has no intention of actually hitting you with any fireball. The fireball is thrown so that you don't do things. Meaning that there's the advantage of, as soon as the fireball is thrown, enemy K5 is looking at everything else that's happening. Thinking about everything else that's happening. You shouldn't expect that this player is hitting things after this fireball just, oh, maybe this will help. It's probably extremely planned. And that sort of thing makes Omni's life hard. Because measuring every spacing at every moment is rough. This person is going to be terrifying in Street Fighter 6 for almost exactly that reason. Because if you start the round with your meter in every round, yeah, not having to build it up is probably going to be helpful. Similarly, it's not the tick throw itself that was effective there, it was the amount of time spent just chilling out doing everything but the tick throw first. I was definitely expecting more of a knockout there, but did not. But sometimes when you make the big bet, sometimes when you're moving this fast, you might lose just to your opponents failing their own execution in some way. The one thing that is working really well for them here is that if we can get Omni to go up to your speed, it's more likely that he'll lose control of the character. Getting the right containment level to one's speed is super important. We do, however, here have a slightly better and more interesting option, because Cody actually performs pretty well at that spacing that you see, although the physical execution of it is a little difficult. Since Cody basically gets no use out of his stand medium punch in this matchup at that range, you can spend a lot more time holding it. And for us, that's conveniently a shoulder button in most people's config. Meaning, you can fight in neutral relatively safely, since Cody's stand medium kick isn't exactly super long range either. You can fight in neutral fairly safely and very quickly get toward Zonk Knuckle setups. Not that you necessarily want to Zonk Knuckle, but the main problem and the thing that makes this fair again is that despite this, you can't actually afford to do this all the time, because Cody's V skill, in this case the Crime Sway, is normally the option you use against Ryu now. If you're holding medium punch, you can't do the move. Meaning that the execution for all of this is very, very quickly adaptive. Still, the ability to cross the screen so quickly when need be, and in some cases to just have complete control of that whole situation, can make it much harder for Ryu to do things in the long term. It's not that he's not doing anything, he'll definitely hit Cody, but it takes much more energy than you would expect, and that's sometimes enough by itself. Similarly, this moment, see right there? It really isn't important that you get closer. You don't have to bulldog in against Ryu as much as you would have had to do in other games. So if Ryu gives you a lot of space, you have to figure out how to get more. This, however, is a bad position. And honestly, I'm not sure if I should have given up that spot. Because Cody has nowhere to go back to make it harder for anything to happen. The main reason you care about this is because when you are close to Ryu and you see a fireball or hear a fireball being thrown, you can't be sure whether or not that fireball's purpose is to bait you into getting uppercutted. But if you are far enough away, you know with some certainty, I'm probably not going to get anti-aired for this. I'm just going to get over this fireball, and whatever else is going to happen afterwards is the thing I have to think about. Zonk Knuckle is not terribly hard to whiff punish, but being sure that it won't hit you can be hard.
You win.
However, if you backdash out of the way of it, even if you backdash fairly early into it, you can't necessarily be sure that you're going to manage to whiff punish because of the fact that most moves that would hit it, Cody's hurt box falls back to
Fight.
Fortunately, our Ryu has the exact opposite end of this. Developed their style around this basically. Meaning that when you do jump over their fireball, chances that you actually land the kick are pretty slim. But if you are used to trying to land the kick and you fail, not only do you have no trip guard, chances are you were at least thinking about whether or not you were going to land it. You didn't jump and just let go of that mentally altogether. Meaning that your opponent now can be reasonably sure that they could rush at you in the same space. One of the most important things to understand though is that a long-range Zonk Knuckle is basically not interruptible. The move is much faster than most people are used to having to deal with, and I don't know that even this player would manage that. It is however true that Ryu could just get away from this by doing certain types of uppercut, or in some cases mashing light kick, not necessarily because it's I'm reacting, but simply because at the range where that's true of Zonk Knuckle, it's also the range where those things just work. So with enough speed and micro movement, you can do just fine.
It's go time.
I see you 1 bar of ping. I don't trust you. I don't believe you at all. Trying to resolve this problem by changing characters isn't normally the way I go about it, and the good thing about it is their spacing of doing these specific things is so good that there would be no way to be confident that a character change would help at all. What needs to be changed is a mindset. Specifically, thinking about when you would actually have any chance of landing a hit. Similarly, thinking about which moves you can do that when you do get hit by a fireball, your situation isn't worse. Because you can definitely get into a lot of situations if you get knocked down, but what can you do to avoid being knocked down by a fireball? Oh well, I guess I didn't need to cancel in that case, but still, I probably would have. That was a moment of me thinking, I need to cancel this, I'm failing. Well, that was just a bunch of failed executions, but honestly, it's one of those times where I'm just gonna go with that.
Final round. Fight.
One important thing to consider here is that if you are playing Chun, you don't always have time to do specific things well. This is one of my largest problems in the game. For example, that. My opponent could think through that situation faster than I would for many reasons. They know that's one of the few times in the match where I actually have enough time to charge the spinning bird kick. Therefore, it is at least a chance that if I've been failing the spinning bird kick execution all the rest of the time because of timing, that I will try it in the one chance I get it. Now, obviously, I should have gone around that, but it's hard to do those things in live matches.
Round one. Fight!
With punish. It made sense to be ready for that in that way. As well as that one.
Round two.
But this is, unfortunately, as I've complained before, this is mostly an execution test for me, which I really don't like because this player is quite good. But in the end, this is still just an execution test. So I really wish one day to be good enough at my execution that I can give him a proper match. I did not expect you to catch that bat dash out of there. But there's the execution again. So again, I hope to one day have the execution to actually fight you at full level, but it isn't there now, so on you go. The speed itself is not actually explicitly the thing that makes most people fail the execution. Speed generally affects more so decisions, especially for a character like Chun-Li, where it really doesn't matter whether or not you have particularly good execution in every case, because her moves are charge, and aside from like 3 things, you won't generally have to care about this. But she does have those 3 things where the execution is complex enough, not necessarily difficult, but complex enough in terms of confirmed timings that you do have to practice it for a fairly long time before you can make the mental connection, the leap between I saw this thing happen and then my hands did the correct thing in response to it. Because if you train it to just be based on you doing a move and hoping the move hits, then you will often waste the meter and die, because if your opponent happened to block it, there isn't enough time for that. There's quite a lot of training time spent just learning to hit confirm correctly. Both Chun-Li and Ken have this as one of their strengths, but it also requires you to practice both characters for quite a while in more complex situations than you'd expect. DWuulfe has similar problems. This matchup should probably be among the best in terms of actually challenging our Ryu's flow, but the requirement from Necalli's side executionally is relatively high. Even though you are mostly able to do slight movements and go through things, recognizing this spacing has now happened and teaching your body, okay, this spacing means press this specific disguidance and, for example, delay the activation of the move a certain amount of time. Understanding that you need to do disguidance does not help you when there are 3 versions of the move, and technically in order to succeed at the thing you want to do, you can't just do it immediately. But it is true that once DWuulfe gets going, it's a little bit harder to like just stress him out. That was probably worth it. Given the amount of damage it did, it's not great, but you don't really want to be like sitting on that meter because this match is relatively slow and the EX moves are not going to help Necalli much in it. There's some readiness. There's some spacing. More spacing. The parry is probably Ryu's best option here. Not necessarily just, oh, I should look to parry, but rather, in any situation where it's unclear what to do next, parry is probably a good bet.
You win.
Necalli isn't necessarily going to get a lot of pressure out of it, even if he counter hits, because he tends to counter hit from far away and knock the enemy back a lot. So, pushing on Necalli's tendency to keep attacking in specific spaces
Round 1.
helps for multiple reasons, mainly that Ryu tends to get great positioning out of certain parries that just blocking the move doesn't help with. In fact, any character who relies quite a lot on controlling you via pushback, it may be a good bet to parry simply because you know that that's their plan. If they're going to be dealing with you by doing pushback strings, it's a much more reasonable concept that they will keep doing it. In Necalli's case, this is more true than for most characters because Necalli doesn't actually have a lot of pressure out of these positions. He mostly just gets to keep going. You don't get to get away from Necalli. Necalli pushes you to where he wants you to be, and then the interactions start over. But Ryu can bypass this whole thing, and most of the time, it will not harm Ryu to attempt this much at all. Obviously, your opponent will adapt over time, but if you are finding yourself having trouble dealing with your opponent's first layer strategy, it's usually a good idea to just annoy them out of it a little bit. Especially before you personally end up very stressed, because once you're stressed, as we always say, you'll drop back to doing what you normally do. And that will then make your opponent who was thinking about it, unless they're really carefully tracking your stress, they'll probably not be ready for what happens. Obviously, as you might have seen from the server maintenance markers, the lounge can only stay open for another half an hour, but as a result of that, it probably will. That said, I think we've rotated through nearly everyone who actually would. No, I guess there's one left. But even so, we're still coming to the end of this stream at the moment, even if the lounge itself is not closing. And obviously, as we're fairly full, if you join in now, we'll all have to drop to back so you can get a match if you really want to. Therefore, I'm not sure if their stuff is stuck too. You can join us tomorrow for Tuesday Melt, our Melty Blood type Lumina content, and Wednesday Night in Birth will follow that. We hope to have our standard Feeling Thursday KOF launches, KOF 15, and I'm still working on a thing, but I think I might have a bot for you by Friday. A KOF one explicitly, so we'll see if that actually works out. I still need to get a lot of testing done on how exactly the inputs are going to work. But we gotta start somewhere. Whether or not that is actually happening, you can find out on our Twitter 2_MK_FGC, which will announce both the bot releases and any other stream information that you need, specifically are we streaming or not. If you don't see a tweet by like 10 minutes after stream, assume we're not. And of course the bots themselves will be able to be found on our website 2-mk.org. But with that having fallen apart in its interesting way, it looks like we have come to the end of our stream for the night. If you're returning 5nat then someone will drop to give you your spot back if you want to get your game in quick.
Let's do this.
But this has been Rillian for Team 2MK. Good luck with your training and good night, everyone.